Um, I have Sam Reinhart. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode, Florida Hockey Bros. My name is David, joined by my brother Daryl. In this episode, we're gonna do some NHL takes, talk about the Maple Leafs for a little bit, and just kind of chat about what's going on around the league. But we're gonna start with my brother wanted to do this fun thing, do a top 5 of what we consider the best players or favorite players, whatever, that are not stars or like superstars, that they're not necessarily considered top guys on any given team, even though I have one guy on my list that's a top guy. That's close to a top guy. Anyway, we can make fun and disagree with our choices. I'm just wondering how perfect your list is.
It's not perfect. I have one guy that you could say like starting to become a bit of a star, but the rest are not. I told you initially that should be none of them should be Panthers because we're Panthers fans, but of course I'm sure you're gonna have.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You're gonna have Panthers on your list because you're like a simple-minded moron.
You know,
think of any players outside of the Panthers.
Yeah, fuck you. You know what I was gonna do? I was gonna ask you in a text. I was like, "Hey, is Elias Pettersson a star?"
Wow.
I like no, because you know why, and this is what my mistake. I went to like top tier level. I'm thinking like, okay, top 2 players of every team.
He's one of them.
Below that, right? But he's just like this year is like his big year,
No, last year he had over 100 points, man, and they've been talking about him, and he already has a big contract, and they're talking about his contract going up. No. It's just that Vancouver hasn't been great.
It's just exactly last year was kind of a disappointing year for them.
He's a star, man.
All right, so let's do. We'll go down. We'll go down in reverse order, 5 to 1. So we'll alternate. So what's your number 5?
My number 5 is a guy that I've liked since last year, and I wanted the Panthers to get because he's cheap, but he can provide a lot of scoring. Daniel Sprong. I like his speed, his scoring. Nice. Not a great defender, to be honest, and doesn't produce a lot of assists. So he's a guy you kind of have to pick your spots with him. Kind of a third-line guy in a top team, in my opinion, but he was kind of a journeyman, played for 3 different teams, was a second-round pick that never quite took off, but then had a breakout season with, and he's still only 26 now, so he had a breakout season with the Kraken, 21 goals, 46 points, I think, in 66 games. And he's on pace for 20 goals again this season. So, yeah, I know, man. I think he's only making $2 million in Detroit right now. So, just one of those guys that you watch him play, and you can see the speed there, you can see the scoring touch, and he's like not a top liner, but he can plug in your top 6 if needed, and not necessarily be a drop off in scoring. And yeah, I'm not always a fan of guys who just score and are liabilities on defense, but I don't know. He is one of those guys that I just the way he plays, he's noticeable. And because he doesn't command a ton of money, he would be just a nice guy for me in like my middle 6 or third line. So yeah, Daniel Sprong is my first choice, man. I've noticed him every time I watch Detroit play.
Nice. That's I didn't think about him at all. That's a really good choice. By the way, when you rank your list, like what criteria are you using? Are you going by?
I'm going by quality. Like
by quality, or not by like least famous, most famous?
No, for me, he's out of my 5, technically in my mind, the least talented. But
interesting.
I don't know. That's how I'm doing it.
Okay. All right. Well, my list is more like my number 1. It's basically the least superstar-y of them all, kind of thing. That's kind of how I liked it to do it, just because it made sense to me that way. So my number 5 is the only one that maybe, didn't have to make the list, but I have, let me find it here. I have Brandon Hagel from the Lightning. I thought about doing Braden
Yeah, he's
Point,
not a
but
star, but his name is starting
I,
to get there.
you know who he is. But he's not. He's not Braden Point. He's not Kucherov. He's not Stamkos. So I think it fits what you were trying to do here.
Just got away with it.
No, actually, I think he's a really good pick. I was shaky about him, but now I'm worried about the Panther guys. Anyway, yeah, man, I saw him, 20, what was it, President's Trophy season. That was his first year with the Lightning, if I'm not mistaken. He barely played that year, but yeah, that's one guy that just screams to me like middle six. That's basically what you're gonna. Sorry, mute my mic. That's basically what you're gonna get with him, and I think he just fits that team well. I mean, they're all miserable. He's one of those miserable guys. So yeah, that's my number 5. What's your number 4?
My number 4 might not be a pick that a lot of people would care for, but I like this guy, Adam Boqvist, from the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's a defenseman. He's a little guy, plays on the right. I just think he's a really good skater. He's quick. He's small. He was kind of, I think he was a first round pick, I want to say. I'll look that up, but he's a guy who I think hasn't taken off in the way that he was expected to. Yeah, he's 23. He's only 6 foot tall. He was a first round pick, 8th overall, so it was a top 10 pick. And I just think he hasn't like fully taken off. And he's been now with the Blue Jackets. He played in Chicago for a couple of seasons. He puts up decent numbers like the last couple of seasons, 22 points, 24 points. He had 11 goals one year in 50 games, which is pretty nice. But just never taken off. He's a minus player for his career. But Columbus kind of stinks. So I think he's going to get traded, and he's kind of like Andrew Peeke, who's the opposite of him, a huge guy who just also hasn't taken off. But there's something about him only being 23, so young, that skill, puck movement, can play on the power play. I don't know. He's a sneaky guy that I could see all of a sudden at 25 really taking off. I think we saw that with Sean Walker, I think, in Philly this year, who now everybody wants to trade for. So anyway, I don't know. I like him. When I see him play, I think there's a lot of skill. He's probably just needs to work on his defensive game and not very physical. But Adam Boqvist, I guess it's a guy I wouldn't mind trying out if I needed a guy for like my middle pair.
Yeah, I haven't watched much of the Blue Jackets, or of him, so I really don't have much to say there. But yeah, I see that your list is like very low. These guys are like, these guys are like very far from mine. All right, I'm gonna just put this guy number 4 to get this out of the way, because if not, it's gonna ruin the rest of the show. I try to replace him, but yeah, my mind only went to so many teams. I have Sam Reinhart. Now listen to my logic, all right? And this makes perfect sense. When Reinhart came to the Panthers, he was barely a star, barely. Maybe like because he was a 20-goal scorer for a few years in a row. But he was not even a star, not even close. Half the league, to this day, most fans don't really know who he is. They kind of know him because he was, a first-round pick for the Sabres back then. But the last 2 years, he's been really good for the Panthers. Even his plus, minus has been great. And obviously, he's taking off this year. So, you have to take into consideration this season as well for this list. So I know he doesn't really belong, but in a strange kind of way, and maybe it's just because he's in a small market like Florida, I think he's just extremely underrated still. I've heard, Justin Bourne from Kippen and Bourne skip over his name when he's talking about top players in the league because he feels like he doesn't belong there, etc. And like he wouldn't offer him a long-term contract. All these things, like that's kind of the narrative around the league, that Sam Reinhart can command a lot of money because of the season he's having, but not because he's this like consistent, super already formed player. He's just entering his prime now. But yeah, that's why I have him on the list, and that logic makes sense to me. So whatever.
Yeah, he would have fit more like last year or year before, probably, maybe, and kind of still be a high end guy for that list. A better option is Batherson from Ottawa, who's also like a 30 goal scorer, but like not quite to Reinhardt's
Exactly.
profile. That would have been a better pick. And I like Batherson. It's just he's not a good defender like a lot of the Senators. My third guy, it's a guy that also is it's not anywhere near close to a star at all. In fact, he got picked up waivers, but this year finally has had a breakout season. Also for the Kraken, Eeli Tolvanen. I love Tolvanen, man. Tolvanen is a guy that I think I wish we would trade for. I think the Kraken are probably going to try to keep him. What I really like about him is that he was a higher pick that again didn't really take off. I'll look up the specifics, but this year finally we're seeing his production. He's 24 only. He was a late first round pick for the Predators, and he got waived. But then he put up 16 goals in only 48 games last season, and now has 29 points and 12 goals in 47. So he might be kind of a 20 goal and 40 to 50 point per season kind of a guy. But what I really like about him is that last time I saw, he was top 5 in the league amongst forwards and block shots. So he's just a guy whose advanced metrics kind of show that he's got some play in him that is beyond the skill, and he can provide a little bit of that hustle, and he can block shots and stuff like that. So yeah, Tolvanen is a guy, again, middle 6, bottom 6 guy, kind of third liner probably in the top team, but I think has tons of upside and could be a late bloomer. I think a lot of these guys will start to show signs of being good by the time they, 26, 27, 28, that's when you might see guys like that really bloom. So anyway, Eeli Tolvanen is my third pick.
Yeah, that's a very nice pick. All right, with my number 3, I think this guy fits the list as well, even though he's had a couple of really good years. Again, my list is like a level above yours in terms of star power. I have Zach Hyman, who's now with the Oilers. I think it's kind of the same boat as Reinhart.
Becoming a star now, but yeah.
He's kind of on the same boat, right? He's a little older, right? I think he's in his 30s already.
He's 30, yeah.
But I kind of have him in the same tier as Reinhart in terms of contribution, what you can get out of him. He can play top 2 lines, top 6, middle 6. He was just a late bloomer. Of course, the Leafs have this guy for 5 years or longer, I think, because he played in the Marlies as well. And right when he's like, you can see the trajectories coming up, that's when they, kind of let him go and couldn't afford him, etc. First year with the Oilers, he was a minus player, but that was it. He's been a plus player his entire career, basically. Really good player. Just confident the last 3 years. His stats are really, really good. So again, just like a tier above the Tolvanens right now, or those type of players from your list, but I think he belongs here as well. So 5, 4, 3 for me are like the 5 will be what I consider the most star power, I guess, and Hagel, then Reinhart, then Hyman. For me, all those 3 guys are kind of in the same tier, in a way. So yeah. All right, what's your number 2?
Number 2, a guy that's definitely another echelon up from most of these people. Not quite a first liner, but definitely a really good second liner. Nick Ehlers, man, from the Jets. He's got speed. He's got sweet hands. He's a guy that every time he kills the Panthers, every time we play against them, or at least it feels that way. And, he makes $6 million. Was a high pick, but kind of 25, 50 to 60 points a year, 25 goals a year type of scorer. He's not going to be like an elite scorer, but still in his 20s, and I think he's going to be a free agent after next season. But yeah, man, Nick Ehlers is that kind of player that you want for your second line. He's a little bit overpaid, but that's because he's in Canada. Probably in Florida, he'd make probably 4.5 or $5 million. But yeah, just that sweet spot of a second liner. kind of like the winger version of maybe not Sam Bennett, because Sam Bennett's not a big scorer, but you never feel like Bennett's overpaid because when it counts, he gives you what you need. I feel like Ehlers is the same way. Like he's making kind of just what he's worth. But he's also fun to watch, right? Just that speed and the scoring touch. Not gonna give it to you every night, but I don't know. I like players like that. So yeah, Nick Ehlers is my number 2.
Nice. All right. My number 2, it's probably, matter of fact, I will bet almost anything that my number 2 is your number 1. Just because this is one of your guys and I stole them for you. All right.
There's no way you know what my number 1 is. You have no idea who my number 1 is. You're going to be surprised. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have Travis Konechny as my number 2.
Konechny's a star now, man.
From the Flyers. Yeah, he is. But, like, again, in that market, like, I don't know if everybody knows.
He's a National League, an NHL National Hockey League star this year, for sure.
Yeah, but is he more of a star than Reinhardt? It's about the same.
No, right? But kind of almost the same, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, young guy, 26, very skilled, a guy we can definitely use, the Panthers can use on our second line or whatever. I know you liked him a lot, so that's one of the guys that you kind of wanted Tito to trade for if it was possible. And it might still be possible. Who knows what the Flyers
I don't know. I think at this point,
a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not there yet. I don't think he's like at $9 million.
No,
yet.
but he was a point per game player last year. It's just that he was injured. And then this season also has been put up a lot of points and has become sort of the leader.
Yeah. He's
and a first liner there, really, and also can play the PK. He's feisty as hell, always has a chip on his shoulder, similar to Hagel. Even though he's a small guy, like if Mackey has some Konechny in him, he'd be a beast. But yeah, just a really good scorer now going into the prime of his career. So yeah, he's a good pick. He's a high end pick for this. Much like my number 1, he's a high end pick for this. But yeah, Konechny is one of my favorite players, even though you hate it playing against him. My number 1 is a guy that it's pushing it and becoming a star, but I don't think I would say he's quite there yet. He's not. When you look at his stats, he hasn't established himself as a star, but that's K'Andre Miller from the Rangers.
Really?
Man.
Okay.
Man, when the Rangers, now they're struggling, but when the Rangers were humming, I watched a couple other games and he was noticeable. The dude can skate, can move the puck. He's big as hell. He can hit. He is a guy that could be kind of like a Aaron Edblack, Hedman type player. He's just not there yet, and he was not he was a late first round pick. So still 24, still developing. So not quite the elite defenseman that you would pick in the top 10 or top 5, but I really like him. And, he's just a modern NHLer in terms of having the size and the skill to go with it. So yeah, I don't know. I've always kind of liked him. It's just that he's a keeper for the Rangers. There's no way.
No, that's a good pick. And I try not to do defensemen because it's so hard with defensemen with stats.
I got 2 because I'm an OG.
Yeah,
the only thing I left out was goalies, but it's hard to find a goalie who's not a star that you like. It's just
Joseph Woll, man, the Wall of
hell no,
Toronto.
No, I respect Wall, but I haven't seen enough. I know that he looks really, really. It's like Knight. Knight has shown flashes of being an elite goaltender, but then also at times doesn't look that great. And I think Wall's the same way. So
yeah, I think
you can't know until you actually can play a couple seasons straight and then show that you can do it.
Yeah, and it's up and down when they're young, and you might as well have them either be the backup or be the starter with like a good backup. All right, my number 1, obviously.
I know who your number 1 is.
I broke the rules, of course.
He's a Panther again.
He's a Panthers. Carter Verhaeghe.
Verhaeghe?
Yes, sir. Now, here's the thing. Verhaeghe, probably the most underrated player forward, the most underrated forward in the whole league when it comes to people knowing who he is. His journey has been amazing. Started from the bottom. Now he's here. My boy is going to get paid, and he deserves it. He's not a perfect player. He needs to be pushed. He needs to play in the top 2 lines for him to shine because he's a pure shooter. He's a good skater, has speed. He can forecheck, back check. He's physical, gets involved, very confident, not afraid to just shoot. Every team needs a Carter Verhaeghe, and on top of that, he's very high level. Obviously, he's a star now with his contributions. His numbers have been great the last 2 years. The Panthers have absolutely, it was kind of like a perfect storm. He just came at the right time, right team. They gave him the opportunity, got to play to the top on the top line after the Lightning couldn't really find use for him. And he was drafted by the Leafs, so it's extra fun. And no, in all seriousness, I think maybe this is like an underrated type of thing, but for Hagee, it's clutch in the playoffs. He's really good. He's really good. Again, he's not perfect. He's more of a $7 million player, maybe 8. If he's gonna give you 30 to 40 goals, then you have to put him in the $8 million range. But yeah, that's my boy right there. No, I didn't have Forsling. I told you I didn't have defenseman because it's hard to justify with the scoring. But at the same time, if you look at Forsling's defensive stats, he's just the best plus minus. Like, he's just one of the best defenders in the league right now, if not like top 2.
Yeah, no, he's definitely underrated, and a guy who, does get mentioned now more. And people have seen what he's done in the playoffs the last 2 seasons. I think he's clutch. That's definitely the type of player he is. And he's the reason why I value him, and I value that kind of player more than like a Nylander. I guess there's a way to transition, talk about the Leafs yet again. But, for the money that you're getting or you're paying Verhaeghe, I'd rather take him than Nylander any day, because it's not going to look as pretty, but he's going to give you some really clutch goals. He's going to give you some physical play. He's a plus player the last 4 seasons straight. For the value, it's great. And you got to push him. He can be frustrating. Early in the season, he was not great. But he corrects it. He figures it out, and you can trust him in those key moments, and he'll make something out of nothing. And score you game winners and series winners. So yeah, man, I respect the pick. Again, I prefer not to go with Panther players because they're too easy. But
yeah, and we know.
And the Panthers is kind of like half the roster is kind of like that.
Yeah, most of the 4 guys in our top 6. Like, you could even say Bennett is underrated.
Yeah, Bennett. You could pick Bennett. You could pick Forsling. You could pick Montour. Even Montour. Montour's not a star, And so Mikkola this season, yeah, there's a lot of guys to like. But yeah, I guess to just before we wrap up, talk about what's happening with the Leafs now. And it is really fascinating, man, to just see the day-to-day talk around that team. Like, even as a fan, it's too much. Like, and I don't mean me. I mean, if I were a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, or like if the Panthers were like Toronto, I've never seen a market in any sport obsessed to this level.
How many podcasts they have? Like 7 podcasts.
No, forget that. Like, that's okay. I mean, content's content, and good for them. I'm talking about the micro, like, breaking down of everything on the team. It's like Samsonov.
You can't fart too loud there, man.
It's like toxic. It's like this idea that like, oh, Samsonov's broken. We never want to see him again. Oh, he's back. It's a redemption story. To like, can you trust him in the playoffs? I'm like, dude, leave the guy alone. He's a goalie. Like, Bob stunk for us for a year and then took us on a playoff run. Like, we have no choice but to deal with the guy. Like,
it was funny that there was this person on Twitter that she highlighted Tkachuk's stats towards the end of December, and she put something like, or he, I don't know, put something like, he's lucky that he's not in a big market. And I'm like, no, he's lucky he's not a Toronto Maple Leafs, because I think most markets would know that he's just coming off an injury. It's going to be an adjustment. He was
getting chances. It's
going to balance out. Exactly. His shooting percentage was terrible, but he was getting he was like number 2 in chances created and shots taken, all kinds of categories. And then obviously he's been the best player in the league since January 1st.
First day of the playoffs, I'll take him over like 99% of the league. Like, there's maybe 3 or 4 other forwards in terms of McDavid, like McKinnon. Like, I'll take, in terms of forwards, I'll take like 3-4 guys, and then Tkachuk.
Yeah. So my point is, and as it relates to the Maple Leafs, yeah, it's like hyper focus, super hyper analysis to the tiniest detail. Like
Where
basically,
they, yeah, go ahead.
Benoit hit a guy 3 times the other day. You see, Benoit hit the guy. What a great player! Benoit's like the 9th best defenseman in like Colorado. Like, get out of here with this crap, man. Like, it's such a weird fan base. They have such a rich history, passion. They're passionate. They travel well. They're great fans when it comes to supporting the team. But they're just like, learn from your mistakes. And I get it. They haven't maybe had that cultural shift in the organization yet to becoming a real winning
No, I think they're used to the flash over the last few years, but they don't fundamentally realize that like your hockey looks very different from most other serious teams' hockey, and that this idea of like, oh, but my God, Benoit hit a guy. I mean, that's laughable. Most markets have physical players. Like, go watch the Hurricanes for a night. Go watch the Kraken, any team. Like, the Jets. Go watch Mikola. Go watch Kulikov. Kulikov's not even a physical guy. He's plastering guys against the wall all the time. He's got more points at bat there than Benoit has, right?
Dude, Bennett had 7 hits the other day in one game. How many hits do you think Nylander has?
Real hits.
Yeah, he'll rock your shit.
And they're in front of the net. Like, even the Coyotes, like with the Coyotes, it got nasty like 4 times in front of everybody's net.
Yeah, Coyotes have
fights everywhere. Sneaky. I mean, there was a fight to start the game, 2 fights to start the game.
Now, Coyotes can give the number 1 team in the West, if they sneak in the wild card, they'll give them a fight.
Yeah, they're very annoying. But all to say that is the micro breaking down that it actually seems like they don't actually see what's real. Like, they were saying, how is it possible that Samsonov all of a sudden came back? And I'm like, dude, Samsonov had a stretch of bad games. He let in some bad goals. We've seen Spencer Knight do that. We've seen Bob do that. Bob had an atrocious game the other night. I forget who he was against that. He let in 3 really soft ones. And then what did Maurice do? Sat him the next game. Stalos had a great game. Then Bob came back and played great. And so, like, you know why Samsonov was struggling? Yes, part of him was him. Part of it is like the Leafs played some of the worst defense, stretch of defense of their season during those games. They hung him out to dry during those games. Why is he doing better now? Because they didn't get that many shots against Seattle, and because the Jets started to lose their legs. And, he made a couple of big stops, which he has been doing. He has been giving them some big stops here or there. It's just that you guys, instead of, that 2-0 that they gave up at the other day, imagine giving that up 5 times in a game, right? Which is what was happening. He's going to stop the one, and then the second and third are going to go in. So to me, that was the whole, like, it's not magic. The guy is a good goalie. He's a decent goalie. He's inconsistent. He's been inconsistent his whole career. He's mentally, can come in and out. But to turn that into this whole like magic, all of a sudden he's fixed or whatever. I'm like, you know what you got to fix? Your defense. Your defense is a joke. You guys don't know how to handle pucks. You guys don't know how to get pucks out. You guys pass it back all the time. Apparently Keefe has no system, and if they do, they shed on it, and get away with it. I mean, Maurice, can you imagine Maurice having Mikola or Kulikov, like McCabe does, like turn it over like loosey-goosey, like 4 straight games? Dude, they wouldn't see the ice. So, it's just kind of ridiculous that it's so micro that it's actually kind of not reality. Like, they don't actually understand what's wrong with their team.
Exactly. No, and they do understand that, like, one show they'll be like, okay, we're just not going to win with this team. We need to change the culture of the team. We need to become something different. We need a new coach, etc. And then
the next day they're like, are we contenders?
Yeah, they'll win. Watch them win tomorrow night against the Jets, and they're
contenders.
They're back. They're back. Stanley Cup.
They think that one game means you're back. It's so... Do they not know how sports work?
Win or lose, look at how they played. They get outplayed most games that they win. And the ones that they've won and had to go to overtime is because Matthews went off. That's pretty much it. They talk about depth scoring. Yeah, their depth scoring is truly awful. Panthers too. Guess what? Since I think
Colorado's too.
Dude,
it's bad.
Luostarinen and Stenlin had been the only two players to score 5-on-5 for like a month and a half for the Panthers on the bottom six. We had no bottom six scoring at all.
And
Barely any
our
blue line
defensemen
scoring.
are not scoring. Ebla's not scoring. Montrose not scoring.
No, it's just our top six. That's why we know it's flawed. We know we need a forward for that third line to get it going. And that's my point. They know what the problem is. And there's a lot of little problems, but you got to start at the top. You start with you either get a new GM or you keep Treliving, and then you get rid of Keefe and you maneuver. But they basically committed the next 2 to 3 years to whatever they have, including Keefe. Keefe would have to be like in a wild card with the risk of not making the playoffs for him to get fired, for sure. He could get eliminated again in the playoffs. First round this year, he's going to be there next year and the year after that. As long as they make the playoffs, as long as the revenue's coming in, and then eventually I'm sure they'll transition. But it's just insane, man. It's insane how like they talk that way. Like the Panthers could lose 4 in a row. I don't think the team is different. I don't think they just became this completely different bad team. They just lost five in a row. If I watch the games, I'll know what happened. I'll understand why they lost those games. I could easily tell you against the Devils, they should have won. Against the Wild, they should have won. Against the Ducks, they should have won. So there's just nothing wrong there. You just had bad games. Whether you took your foot off the gas, whether you just couldn't score. So we understand the winning streaks and the losing streaks.
Your baseline shows you that the team is fundamentally sound. That when your team is trying, like, and which they do most nights, the Panthers most often than not are trying, you're going to beat the hell out of people. You're going to have periods where you are shooting your opponent 20-2, 20-3, which we do often. That doesn't happen to us the way that the Leafs allow. And so that's why you have to break it that way. You have to realize, it's a habit thing. It's an identity thing. This is who you are. You have a lot of skill. That is it. That's your team. There's nothing to it. There's nothing other than you have 4 or 5 guys who have a lot of skill. A couple other guys who, if they have it going, can contribute. But you're going to take chances. You're going to turn it over. You're going to have poor defense. You're going to make bad decisions. Your goaltending is a bit of a mess. You don't know. You have to pray that Wall comes back at the same level and the Samsonov doesn't drop off again. I don't know what magic Treliving can work out. I don't see it happening. And the other thing is this that they don't get. Bertuzzi, Domi. Oh, why is Bertuzzi not being a rat? He doesn't want to be there, bro. Like, Bertuzzi knows he made a mistake. Bertuzzi came in. All he got was mistreated by Keefe, embarrassed by Keefe on the bench in front of everybody on national television early in the season. Instead of actually yelling at the other guys, he ran out of, he can't yell at Bertuzzi anymore because now he's thinking anyway. So what is he going to do? Bench the stars. I mean, he's getting desperate, right? And did they respond? Not really. They played better. They couldn't play worse than they were doing before. But the power play still didn't score after that. And they got lucky with that overtime goal. That was all Nick Robertson stealing the puck. But to me, it's like they're going to do this again. They're going to have periods like that again. This is who they are. And they might go on a little run, and then they're going to do it again. And then they don't understand the playoffs, there's no bad games. Like, you could get killed, right? Because things went the wrong way. But in terms of effort, in terms of trying, if the teams that don't really, really try, they get called out. Like the Jets pooped the bed against the Vegas after the game 1 last season, and then their own coach was like, this was embarrassing, we're cowards. But most teams, it ain't going to be like that, and especially not in the East. I mean, the East is just brutal. The East, like, I'm scared of any opponent in the East not named.
Yeah, everybody plays hard. When everybody plays hard, it evens out.
Even Philly, you tell me go face Philly in a 7-game series, I'm like, that's gonna hurt.
You never know.
No, and even if you win, it's gonna hurt. You're gonna have so many fights, So
it's the intensity, man. Like, how many games do you see the Leafs play extremely hard in a row? Do they go fight? They'll have a 5-game winning streak because it's the Sharks or whatever. But I guarantee you they're not going to do like the Panthers did, beating Vegas twice, the Oilers. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that in a row in the way they did. But they'll see a performance like the Leafs against the Canucks. Oh, we came back, and like, that was impressive considering it was the Canucks. Dude, Demko had one of his worst games of the season.
And the Canucks on the second period disappeared because the Canucks are also an inconsistent team, and a young team, and they disappear in the second period.
They've been
Tucker was Tucker to call a timeout because
I don't want to call it overachieving, but yeah, their goals above expected is incredibly like freaking world record ridiculous at this point. Their plus minus is like 50 something. I don't know. 40. What is it? 58, dude. They're plus 58 goal differential. That is insane. 30 regulation wins. Jesus.
Yeah, no, they're not as good as the numbers show. But anyway, they still got beat. And whatever. It's the eye test. You can see it. It's just funny, the hyper analysis and the hyper obsession. And I know they got to create content, so some of it is like theatrics, but I guess what I'm most fascinated by is the fact that they talk about it so much, and yet to me, they're almost always fundamentally wrong. And it feels like insanity. It feels like, one day we're all in, one day everything, blow it all up. And I'm like, you are who you are. Like, that should be every show. Like, are you surprised they won? No. Are you surprised they lost? No. Are you surprised that, they got embarrassed? No. Are you surprised they got lucky and scored in overtime? No. Are you surprised Nylander hasn't scored in how many games and looks like a ballerina? No. Are you surprised Nylander put up points in 10 straight games? No. That's who you are. But are you going to win in the playoffs? I don't see it. There's no way you can get through 4 series against serious competition. Like, you won't survive it. Like, so I can't wait, man, for this year's playoffs. I want to see who they face, but it's gonna be either Tampa or Florida, or maybe if they're lucky, some kind of wild card team. But even the wild card teams, I don't know.
The Leafs are very far from the Bruins. They're not going to be able to win the division. They're not going to be able to be top 2. Yeah, so
it's going to be Tampa or Florida.
I think there's a better chance of them being a wild card. If the Lightning stay hot, then they have no choice but to be a wild card. I don't think the Panthers are going to drop to a wild card spot. So I think the Lightning can definitely steal that spot from them. The Leafs do have games in hand on the Lightning. I think 3.
Yeah. One thing I'll say is this: they have had a lot of injury issues with their goalies and defense, but now they're top forwards. Now they're top 6. One of the core 3 or 4 gets injured for 2-3 weeks. Let's see what that looks like.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? There's certain players, like for the Panthers in the top 6 is Bennett and Barkov. If one of those 2 guys is out, the lines get ruined.
Yeah,
the chemistry gets ruined. Kachuk is like useless. Barkov is out. The whole team is just in shambles.
I actually think that if they lose Marner, they would really struggle.
Yeah, Marner provides some, a lot of the playmaking.
I mean, he's sloppy. He turns it over, but he also moves the puck a lot.
Oh yeah, no, and obviously, like Matthews, like if Matthews gets injured, like Barkov, if Matthews misses the same amount of games that Barkov has missed, starting like next week or after the All-Star break, yeah, they're gonna.
But Matthews, you can have Nylander and other players step up and give you a little bit of scoring. I think that playmaking, like which Matthews doesn't provide, might in some ways be worse. But anyway, all I'm saying is if you guys miss, if some of your top 4 gets injured later in the season, you might go through a tough stretch, and you better keep winning, because that race for the wild card is going to be tight. So anyway, we've gone long, but yeah, it's interesting, man.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, guys. Well, next week we have the All-Star break coming up, so we'll come up with some topics for you guys for next week. Maybe we'll keep it a bit more general, see what our predictions are for the playoffs, who's going to play who's going to get to the finals now that I forgot what our picks were, man. Who did I pick? Did I pick the Leafs to go to the Cup?
My picks were terrible, too.
You had Carolina, right?
I had Carolina and Dallas, bro.
Well, yeah. Well, Dallas is not...
The Stars don't look to me
they're
like
very talented, but they don't have it. They don't hit.
They're very vulnerable. Physical.
Yeah. And Carolina, goaltending. They have no goaltending. They need this kid. Yeah, what's his name?
Kochetkov, and they might need to make a trade.
Ranta is having his worst season ever. Yeah. All right, so we'll catch you guys next week. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.
All right.